Stocks notch up some gains as an end to the US shutdown, and investor optimism on Indian equities provides a sentiment boost. IT, pharma and metals are the big gainers, while PSU banks are soft. The stock of Lenskart recovers after listing at a discount to the offer price of 402 rupees following a strong response from institutional investors to its over 7,000 crore rupee IPO. Founder Piyush Bansal sees a big need for vision care and believes that people will gravitate towards the best brands. The government has allowed 1.5 million tons of sugar exports in the 2025-26 season against the industry demand of 2 million tons. The allowance is, however, higher than the 0.8 million tons permitted in the last season. The stocks of sugar producers perk up. Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister Shaktikanta Das says that there will be several reforms in the coming days, including the area of ease of doing business. He adds that the Indian economy continues to be strong, stable and resilient despite the trade uncertainties. The longest government shutdown in US history could be set to end after the Senate, with bipartisan effort, votes to pass a stopgap funding bill which will keep the government running till the 30th of January next year. The bill must also be approved by the House of Representatives and President Trump before coming into effect. If there was ever a day that summarized power and the top voices of the country, it was Friday at the Global Leadership Summit of CNBC TV18. And you're watching Business Lunch. We are coming to you live from the CNBC TV18 Motilal Oswal studios. I'm Mormas Fatakia. It's a fairly good start to the week for Indian markets after 2 straight weeks of losses that have come in for the index. Of course, they're still very shy of crossing some very important levels, but a positive start nonetheless. Now the index at the highest point of the day, 25,650, 160 points higher. And a couple of factors leading to this, of course. One being, of course, the hopes rising of the shutdown in the US coming to an end after the Senate vote. Still a lot of processes that need to be completed, but the Dow futures and the Nasdaq futures in particular are rebounding, and the Nasdaq futures are up almost 300 points. And as a result of which, that's showing up on the IT stocks as well in the country. The IT stocks leading the gains on the index in today's session. The Nifty IT up almost 2% in today's session. And the other one, of course, being the Goldman Sachs upgrade that came in for India 13 months after they had downgraded the rating in October of 2024. The Nifty target set at 29,000 by Goldman Sachs. So a couple of positive triggers leading to this strong start to the week. Of course, we are watching out for some big results as well from Bajaj Finance, from ONGC, awaiting more commentary from HCLTech. So keep an eye out on all of these names as well. But the talking point all through the morning has been Lenskart. The stock listed at a discount fell further lower, but then has recovered, and recovered how? From those post-listing lows, currently holding on to gains of around 1%. So that's almost a 13% recovery from the lows of the day. And Mangalam is now joining in for more details on this. Mangalam.
Well, for Lenskart, you know, it's the classic question, good business, and is good business a good investment or not? Especially given the leadership that the company enjoys in its category. And understandably, there was a fair amount of demand for the issue as well. 28 times led by institutions at 40 times, HNIs at around 18 times as well. But remember, at near 70,000 crore valuation, the company was offered at over 235 times FY25 price to earnings. So that was something that caused the stock to open on a relative muted move. But at the same time, we saw some recovery given the inherent strength in the business from the lows as well. And it's very close to issue price. It's a D2C company that designs and sells a wide range of eyewear products. Of course, Indian business accounts for nearly 60%. They acquired Owndays for $400 million. That now accounts for about 40% of their overall sales. And they have about 2,800 stores, of which 2,150 are in India itself. The unorganized to organized shift for Lenskart, happening at a pace of nearly 1.6 times. And in that as well, they are nearly 2.5 times bigger than their nearest competitor in India. And the brand appeals to both segments of the audience, where 18% comes in from sub 2,000 rupees a pair and 18% comes in from above 10,000 rupees a pair in terms of sales as well. But then the big question, once again, how much are you paying for it? Because if you look at it, the first quarter revenue is closer to 2,000 crores with 17.5% margins, net profit at 60 crores. You annualize that, on a trailing basis, definitely it's 10.5 times price to sales and 234 times price to earnings. But even if you analyze the current revenue run rate and the profitability run rate, it is between 7 to 8 times 1 year forward earnings, and at the same time trading well over 200 times forward earnings as well. So it is, again, a question of good business versus good investment. And that's exactly the answer that we'll get over the coming days.
Time will tell. Mangalam, thank you for that update. And let's also bring you some key insights on the Indian markets from CNBC TV18's Global Leadership Summit. Listening to market veterans S. Narain and Rhythm Desai as we take this short break.
We think it's a mature bull market. So, there have been such good stock pickers in India that anything which has to be discovered got discovered. But a lot of people get frustrated.
That is like the efficient market theory.
A lot of people got frustrated. They buy in 2023, the share hasn't worked for 2-3 years. They get irritated, they start selling. So we found that in many sectors, people get frustrated holding a stock for 2-3 years, they don't get return, they come and sell. So we've been trying to buy wherever we find that the seller has got frustrated with holding stocks. Not like 2018 to 20 was very easy. You buy PSU, buy metal, buy telecom. All those stocks are very cheap. Today, all those sectors are not very cheap, but across, whether it is quality, whether it is many other sectors, suddenly you'll find someone coming and selling because they waited for 2-3 years, no return, they'll come and sell. So we buy across sectors, and we find like recently we bought oil and gas, and we found that it suddenly performed. Now today, if you ask me, is oil and gas the best sector? I would say I would think, because oil and gas has done very well. So we look across sectors at this point of time. But do we expect mega returns from here? For that, we need supply to come down. The day supply comes down for 3 months, this flow comes, our SIP flow keeps coming, then I think we have a good rally ahead.
India's relative valuations have corrected a long way, and we're now actually at levels which we don't see very often. So India does look far more appealing as a market to foreign investors. And the final point is that in recent months, the focus of global tourist capital, the one that looks at short-term returns, has been on AI. And India does not really offer an AI trade. So ultimate trigger point for the return of the FPI will be if the AI trade starts fading. I think India will suddenly start looking very attractive.
Welcome back. Now, life insurance companies recorded strong overall performance in October. Yash is now joining in with the fine print of that. Yash.
Well, the numbers have been very strong as far as the life insurance sector is concerned. And one standout performer in the month of October has been SBI Life. SBI Life has recorded a second straight month of very strong growth in the month of October. And this growth in the month of October comes on a very strong base again, which means October of last year. To speak about specific numbers, SBI Life Insurance, as I said, very strong growth on a strong base. The new business premium growing by 20%, APE growing by 19%, retail APE also growing by about 19%. The performance from SBI Life was followed by Axis Max Life Insurance, which again grew strongly on a strong base. NBP, the new business premium for Axis Max Life, growing at 15%. APE at 17%, retail APE at 16%. HDFC Life, it was a mixed growth on a strong base. The new business premium growing by about 1%, APE growing by 7%, retail APE growing by 9%. ICICI Prudential Life Insurance, weak growth on a strong base. The new business premium, that saw a growth of 7%, APE saw a growth of 9%, retail APE grew by about 3%. Finally, LIC, it was a strong growth, but one needs to factor in the fact that this strong growth comes on a very weak or a favorable base. So the new business premium, that saw a growth of 13%, APE saw a growth of 30%, retail APE also grew by about 28%.
Yash, thank you for that update from the life insurance companies. The other stock that is in focus is Bosch, and that is following reports that China has resumed supplying chips to car makers. Sudarshan is now joining in with more on this. Sudarshan.
So over the last few weeks, one company that you would have seen in the headlines was Nexperia. The reason, it's a Chinese chip making company. It's one of the biggest suppliers to global automakers. Now, recently, US President had a meeting with Chinese President and they had reached to certain agreements. And after that, we have seen that China is lifting the curbs on rare earths and all the other. Similarly, US has lifted the curbs. And after US has lifted the curb, it has also lifted the curb on Nexperia. And over the weekend, there was a statement of Volkswagen that it has started seeing the supply of chip from Nexperia and first delivery has arrived. Now, if you remember, on October 28, Bosch had released a statement saying that there are certain problems or there are certain issues with the chip supply, and Nexperia being one of the biggest supplier of electrical component of the company, if the supply does not improve, it might have an impact on its business. But with now the restrictions have been lifted, it can be taken positively for Bosch.
And the stock is reacting to that positively as well. Sudarshan, thank you for that update. Now, the Supreme Court will soon hear a PIL on the regulation and use of artificial intelligence. Ashmit is joining in with more details on this. Ashmit.
Well, this is a key talking point that has emerged once again now, this time at the hands of the Supreme Court. Public interest litigation has been filed. The public interest litigation flagged the use of AI and the lack of a regulatory framework. Now, these are aspects that have been flagged before the Apex Court. What's interesting is that this was done before a bench headed by no less than the Chief Justice of India. And importantly, the Chief Justice of India remarked that he himself had seen pictures of himself, of other Supreme Court judges that had been morphed using AI tools, using AI technology, and thereby noting that there is concern that the Apex Court, that the Supreme Court now feels with respect to this new technology and with respect to the need for a regulatory framework. So with that in mind, the Supreme Court essentially saying that it is agreeing to hear this petition. The Supreme Court will be taking up this PIL 2 weeks from now. On the sidelines, important to mention that as far as deepfakes is concerned, that is one aspect where the government is doing some work. The government has proposed amending the current IT rules that are in place. The amendment to the IT rules essentially proposes that any content that is put out that is generated by AI will need to be watermarked, will need to be clearly labeled so that the users can clearly gauge for themselves whether this is an authentic content or whether it's generated by AI. Those rules, of course, are currently not in effect. They're currently in the public domain for consultation, but there is a framework that is being contemplated. The Apex Court also voicing some concern. 2 weeks from now is when the case gets taken up once again.
Ashmit, thank you for bringing us those updates. Let's bring you some more highlights from the CNBC TV18 Global Leadership Summit. The Principal Secretary to the Indian Prime Minister, Shaktikanta Das, says that the Indian economy continues to be sound, stable and resilient amidst the global uncertainties. He also reinforces that more reforms are in the offing, especially on the ease of doing business front. Listen into what he had to say.
The overall, in the global context currently, when the world order is changing, when the rules of international trade are being rewritten, when multilateralism is being replaced by regional agreements and by bilateral agreements, given the current uncertainties all around, both geopolitical and economic, Indian economy continues to be sound, stable and resilient. That's the first point which I would like to mention. I can back it up with a series of factual details, but in the interest of time, I'll leave it at that. Second, the goal of Viksit Bharat, that is making Indian economy as an advanced economy by 2047, it's very much on track, and the Honorable Prime Minister has set the roadmap you would have seen, just think of 2025, the kind of reforms which have been taken, GST, next-gen GST reforms which were undertaken recently. The Prime Minister talked about it on 15th of August from Red Fort, and within 5 weeks, on 22nd of December, the next-gen GST reforms were implemented with the cooperation of all the states. So the second point I want to mention is that the goals of Viksit Bharat, the roadmap has been laid. Several reforms this year have been undertaken, not only in GST, but also in non-financial sector deregulation, for which a high-level committee has been appointed. So in the days and months to come, you will see a series of reform measures relating to ease of doing business, relating to making Indian economy more competitive. All these measures will follow. So as the Prime Minister has pointed out on 15th August, I'm referring to that because that was really a moment which really marked a leap to the future. On 15th August, the PM PM stressed that reforms will continue with greater vigor. And thereafter, we had GST 2.0. Many deregulation measures are in the offing, and several other measures are in the offing. That's the second point which I would like to mention.
We'll take a short break for now. More news and updates follow on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, the US Senate late on Sunday moved to end the 40-day shutdown, and the vote to advance such a bill passed by a 60-40 margin. Even if the Senate passes the bill, the package must still be approved by the House of Representatives and signed by President Donald Trump. Now, under the deal, the Republicans will vote in December on extending subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, a key promise of the Democrats ahead of the 2026 midterm polls. A British state broadcaster BBC's Director General Tim Davie and new CEO Deborah Turns have resigned after a leaked internal memo that suggested a documentary produced by the BBC had edited 2 parts of the US President Donald Trump's speech together so that he appeared to explicitly encourage the Capitol Hill riot of January 2021. The US President Trump also welcomed the resignation of the 2 officials. A couple of stocks that should be on your radar. HCLTech is one of them. We addressed it just before the results, just at the start of the show as well. HCLTech awaiting more commentary from the management, but before that, the stock has surged to the highest point of the day. At one point was up almost 4%, so it's a slight cool off, but still seeing gains. Remember, the stock is down 20% on a year-to-date basis. Epigril's numbers flashing at the bottom of your screen. The profits are down 37% from last year. The stock has taken a bit of a nosedive after the announcement of the numbers. It will be interesting to see if there is any one-off in the base quarter or if there is lower other income. We'll see more numbers from the revenue and the margin front as well for Epigril. But for now, 7% lower on that stock. Among the top Nifty losers, of course, Trent continues to lead that, 7% lower after a slew of downgrades and price target cuts coming in after the results that were declared after market are 7.5% lower now on Trent at 42.77. I take your leave on this edition of Business Lunch from me and the team. Thank you so much for watching. Midcap Radar on the other side.